Alright, and we are live. Alright, and we are live. Alright, and we are live. Sorry about that. Always somehow forget to mute my test output. So we're gonna be painting some of these Bladeguard. Why is it not focusing? Come on. That's quite fuzzy on there. Let's see if we can. And get a bit. It's not the best. What if I do this? If you are in chat, say hi. I'm still getting a few things set up here. Oh, that is much better. Look at that. You guys can't quite see the rest of my setup here, but you can get some of the crispy detail on the model, which is, I think, the most important here. I do have a few bits I need to pick out in black on this guy. I'm going to be mounting this shield right on his base like that, but sort of like that. However, I do want to paint the backs of his legs. Just black those out really quick. First project, I've bought some of this Pro Acryl black, coal black, and it is a weird paint, let me tell you. It's kind of strange. It has this really, I don't know, well, you can tell on the camera, this really sort of like matte black, almost like chalky texture to it, and it's does not have great coverage for a black. It's not gonna matter too much for my methods, but still a little weird. I think I'll probably go and pick up another ball of Vallejo when I have a second. But for now, let me just put my not so great brushes. I also get my paint water. Oh, hey Face, I didn't think you'd be joining today. Yeah, I had off for MLK, so... Ah, sick. Nice to see you. Hope you're having a good time at work. I'm supposed to be back at school on Mondays, but it is MLK, so... I figured I'd use my day off to get a quick first painting stream in, now that my sub's okay. Yeah, I feel the pictures going through. Let me know how everything looks and sounds. If there is an issue, I think better to correct it early. Yeah, this Procreal block, usually their paints are so good, but this one's a bit weird. Nice. How are you enjoying it? I think, oh, I'm just using the camera from my iPhone, I think it's like 11 or 12. It's a little bit out of date now, but just hooked up as a webcam. How are you enjoying Devastation of Bulk? I think last time you mentioned there were some parts of it you didn't quite like. Where'd I put that shield? Ah, back here. And let me just get a bit of black on there. But yeah, just a humble iPhone. Nothing too special. Ah, nice. Honoring your gender chapter, huh? Oh yeah, Gabriel Seth is a unit. That is one thing I like about that series at least. It did give some time for the for some of the lesser not lesser known chapters. I mean, Gabriel Seth is, or Flesh Tears rather, are quite popular. But it is nice to give them a shout out in a mainline Blood Angels book. Yeah, okay. So on to some of our rough highlights. So the only GW paints I own are these, because I think they have quite nice sort of blue grays to them. I picked these up quite a while ago, and they're still going strong, since you don't really need much for the dry brushing. Also, I have this Vortex Mixer, so I might as well use it. Say as it seizes up on me. But yeah, I have not actually read that one. I might need to look into it at some point. It is a nice tone, however, I do undercut some of the blueness from the Dark Reaper by adding in, or mixing it rather, with some... Oh yeah, no problem. I totally get this is a pretty strange hour to be streaming. With some Army Painter Uniform Gray. And also just letting it, again, nice mid-tone there by allowing some of the black to also get in there and affect the final tone we'll be getting. And just get any of the bigger areas of paint off. And one thing I also do is I'll sometimes apply a bit to my thumb there just to see what kind of how much paint exactly we have. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you're on a more even surface like a shop mount like I have here. And here we're trying to go for, I think, like about 90%. We are going to come back and mute this down. So this is really to get those sort of, should probably do this on camera, really get anything but the hardest recesses sort of tinted by this dry brushing stage. We're going real heavy with a big brush here. Bladeguard are a bit weird because there is so much fabric on these guys. So there's not going to be too many big panels of exposed armor when you worry about getting nice gradients on, but still requires quite a bit of work if you want some good contrast. Yeah, it seems that whenever I go in too vigorously with the brush, the camera likes to unfocus, but we'll try and make sure everything stays visible to you guys. So, now we get the other three to about the same stage. This guy's still drying, so we may have to come back to him, but we'll see. I got these brushes just over Christmas as a gift along with this palette, like a whole big set. Oh, nice, some new tools. And just constantly, as I'm dry brushing, I see all these little strands coming off. So it's probably not the best build quality. It's nice to have some of these nice rounder dry brushes, but I may go back to my makeup ones. I guess if you are very new for equipment, women's makeup brushes are a great asset. They don't need to be like new and pristine. Like, you can ask whoever woman you have in your life and just grab one of hers, because they are excellent for stuff like this. And I see that I don't really have too much paint left. I did not mix up enough of that sort of dark gray with that sort of blue hue, so I will have to go back in here and just mix up a little bit more. Drop of black, a heavy brush load of this dark Reaper, and a drop of uniform gray. Get that mixed up. I'm seeing that this is not quite as dark. This is a surprisingly not very strong black, I have to say. Monument Hobbies usually makes fantastic products, but this black is, at least compared to my gold standard of Vallejo, is quite different. Which, you know, different isn't bad here, but at least for my purposes, not necessarily 100% sold here. I think I got this guy mostly how I want him, but I'll just pick out a few extra things. Not too worried about the shield. I have a feeling I'll probably either paint these. Maybe I will leave them black. I don't know, but I think I will go in and paint this inner side with white with either silver or maybe gold outlines. But definitely not gonna leave it black, so I'm not gonna worry about dry brushing there. Only the parts that are actually going to stay as black plate armor. I do have some plans a little bit later today, so I really doubt I'm gonna finish these guys in one stream. Only have maybe 3 hours. I'll have to double check how long you need to get ready, work, but you know, we'll figure it out when we get to it. And we're looking good there. So, we are at a point where instead of also sort of using any of the black that remained there, we're just gonna come in with some more Dark Reaper and Uniform Gray and do another layer of these highlights. So we're gonna do about, I would say, 3 to 4 extra. You can, you know, tone this down a bit. It's really those, I'd say probably, you know, you could maybe do 3 total, but it is nice to get that sort of subtle differentiation. Even through the wash, it is somewhat noticeable and gives you a nice, more even more even transition between your layers there. Also lets you do some nice gradients and things of that nature, so let me even do a little bit extra paint on there because we ran out the last time. I am staying here with this bigger brush because we're not too worried about getting really extending the volumes yet and being intentional. We are just getting some more base tones down. And I will leave this guy for last again because he is still a little wet with regards to that black that we just did before. While that dries up, probably won't be too long now, but still, yeah, let's focus on this guy instead. You're gonna notice at this stage, and it no longer really reads as black. It's pretty swiftly going to transition into like a sort of dark gray blue, but that is all part of the process here. We will eventually come back to it. Now, I don't know exactly what I want to do for these shoulders, whether I want them to be black cross on white field or do the Sword Brother red cross on black field. So just to sort of hedge my bets, I am going to also dry brush them and just make the call later. You can see that unlike when we airbrush, there is a bit more texture, depending, of course, a lot of it depends on the brush you're using and your mechanical application, you know, the amount of pressure you're using with your hand when you actually apply your various layers. But I do like the sort of amount of intentionality that you're able to get from these dry brush layers. Now finally back to this fella. And at this point, we're still being pretty all-encompassing. The only areas we're really trying to stay away from are like the heavily shadowed areas, like sort of like within the arms and all that. But we're still basically going for a nice, even application over everything. Alright, there you go. At this point, we are going to no longer use Dark Reaper. We're instead going to pull out Fenrisian Gray. Sort of any blue-toned sort of lighter gray will work. And as before, we are just going to apply that into the same sort of big mix of paint that we have going here. We're just going to gradually alter that and lighten it as we go. And for now, I'm going to add in some more uniform gray, just to undercut some of that blue. And I think this brush is getting a little bit too big for what we want to do here, so I will transition into this sort of... I think I had some paint dry up in here, so let me just use a little bit of friction, break that up, get the crystals nice and soft. But this sort of makeup brush with at one point it was a much better chisel. Now it's sort of done. I do think I didn't do a greatest job of washing this before, but it'll still be good. Alright. Yeah, but this sort of chisel tip just lets me get a little bit more control when I am dry brushing, because now I want to start sort of highlighting, or rather using highlights to accentuate geometry and add some more sort of visual interest. So, like, for example, again, I don't know, I think GW paints these as gold. I don't know exactly why I want to keep these sort of knee guards black, or if I will go in some metallic, but either way, I'll sort of run my brush along, dry brushing, but making sure I sort of pick up that top lip, and also the sort of top part of that rounded knee guard, and really pick out that volume there. You might even go along the side here, where a bit more light might be glancing off. And as I do, you can see that there is still a little bit of texture forming. It's quite important you do this, that you try and be meticulous about mold lines when you assemble your models, because this will really highlight them. Like you can see here that when I dry brush, I'm trying to catch maybe like around this top lip of the armor plate, and then along the bottom lip, and also where it sort of flutters out near the bottom is going to catch a little bit more light, right? So you're going to want to, sort of with a downward motion, get some paint deposited onto there. And some areas like sort of the thighs here are almost completely covered by his arms, his tabard, and his sort of hip plates. So we're just not gonna worry about those too much, right? If something is hard to reach, that generally means you're okay leaving it into like leaving it in the shadow, right? You might not want to highlight that too much. It might come off as a bit garish if you do, or really sort of eye-catching in a bad way. That's something so recessed in the model. May have so much visual attention brought to it. Apologies if my hands ever leave the frame. I'm not quite used to painting on stream, so I'm sort of used to bringing things right up, or sort of more close to my base of my body, not painting quite so far out, but I am attempting to correct that thing. I do think I may be mixed up not quite enough of this lighter gray mix, but should be enough for this model. And then we can go off and mix up some more for the other two guys of the squad. And you might see that I am calling attention to some areas that will not be black in the future with this, and I'm mainly doing that sort of help get a sense of the mall's volumes, because that will actually be pretty useful when I go back in and paint those areas. I'll know where my midtones or my shadows or my highlights are going to be. We still have one more round of highlights to go, but I am not quite happy with how light we're getting this, because I will be darkening this down pretty soon. You know what? I just noticed an error in the stream title, so let me correct that very quickly. If I can midstream. I'm not sure if that's in my power, but that title. Let's try typing this one-handed. Moment. There we go. Sorry about this, anyone who might be watching. Uh-oh. Also, I just realized I'm not spectating what the stream might be looking like for our mobile viewers. So let me have this UI set up instead, just to give me a better idea of what that looks like. Alright. There we go. So that guy's done. Now we're going to mix up our uniform gray and Fenrisian gray again. I'm actually quite a bit more happy, I think, with this consistency. Yeah. So, at this point, you can start worrying about doing things like catching the edges. Don't worry about too much overspill. We'll be using some speed paints. Of course, contrast paints also work. any of even like washes or inks, anything that will help mute down your guys. I'm also seeing that shield thing white get highlighted the way I want to, so paying a little bit extra mind. Yeah. Is one of those things where if you haven't really painted before, or if you're new to these kinds of techniques, you need to really be willing to go a little bit above and beyond when it comes to your application of highlights, because they will be so muted down. Now, I do like a nice stark layer of edge highlights right at the end. But you really also need to be a bit aggressive with these mid-tones and sort of early highlights. Don't be afraid to go a little bit beyond, because it will all eventually get equalized and brought back to a sort of a dark blue-gray. Now, you can probably tell, just visually, these two are not quite the same. I obviously, I'm not going to be too worried about rehighlighting this guy, because we still have one more layer of highlights to go. Anything I'm not happy with that gentleman, I can correct momentarily. I do like mixing, when I add all these paints and highlight layers, I do like sort of mixing one on top from there. It just gives you a little bit of consistency, right? It gives you some, I guess consistency won't even be the right word, because you like almost a chronology of highlight colors. It makes sure that every layer is being informed by the one before it. You could probably see that there's almost like these sort of like speckled effects coming from the brush, and from these occasional stippling gestures, just to give a bit more visual interest to some flower plates. I'll especially be doing this with our final highlight layer. Now, with these sorts of techniques, there's really three ways you can do that. That's either by dry brushing, as I'm doing here, by stippling or sponging. They can be you can get very analogous effects with both. It really just is a case of doing something similar to what I'm doing here, but even more heavily textured surface, if you want a little bit more of a gritty, less even look. That I think looks really nice on like Horus Heresy models and models with maybe a little bit less going on. But of course, if that's the style you want to go for, go ahead and do it on your Bladeguard. And the last is dry brushing, which is on the opposite spectrum, a lot more smooth. So basically, depending on what kind of look you want, that's going to inform what you do. Dry brushing, I think, gives you a nice midpoint. I won't quite heavy with those highlights in that recess. Those will be darkened down, but I do... Well, this might be a bit advanced, right? I don't know how... I don't really know the skill level of my viewership here, but the reason I went in with those highlights into that recess is this is sort of like the optimum viewing angle, right? Right here, sort of he's looking straight on, sword point forward. I really like this angle. I want this angle to look good, and there's would be sort of a focus. There will be a beam of light headed into that recess there, so I really want to make this angle look good, so I'll call attention to that. Likewise, I will be highlighting that area just inside the arm there, giving that a little bit more interest. You really should try using your highlights to call the eye, and worried about sort of your optimal viewing angles. It's kind of a requirement, both for stuff like non-metallic metal, but also even just methods like this. You want to think of, from this angle, you want to think of where the light's coming from and how it's going to be hitting your model, and you want to really be doing everything with that in your mind, selling that illusion. Alright. So now we have three very different looking guys, but of course, I will attempt to fix any differences with this last highlight layer. I just realized how insane it is, the fact that I guess I've been live for 36 minutes, because it feels like I've been here for maybe 5. So let me just get a quick drink of coffee. So we're going to be using some Monument Hobbies white. I don't really feel a need to go for a stark white highlight, so I will be mixing in that Fenugreek gray. Because we will still have one final highlight layer on top of this after our wash. We are still a little bit too much moisture on there, but that's fine. The head is often where you want to really be pushing those highlights, and shadows often get a lot of contrast in there, and it will make your guys look. You also do something similar to this method with almost any color. You will likely want to go a little bit heavier on you want to go lighter on the shadows, if that makes any sense. Because if, for example, I did a wash of blue over this, it would come out as quite desaturated. So unless that's the look you want to go for, probably all those layers that we did in that very dark gray, you probably want to bring everything up a stage and then do a final layer of white. You could get some really nice effects going. This method is also really good if you're trying to learn like non-metallic metal. Like it basically lets you put yourself in the headspace of where are my shadows coming from, where are my highlights coming from. Lets you do all that fun stuff without too much risk, because you will eventually be able to filter everything through the lens of whatever ink or contrast paint, speed paint, or wash you will be using to inform the eventual scheme of the model. And now I think we have one great looking Space Marine there. All the areas that I want to stick out. okay, with the exception of that arm. Very nice. Now, while I don't have great things to say about the white color for Monument Hobbies, sorry, I don't have great things to say about the black color for Monument Hobbies, this white is spectacular. Very good things, I think for very good reason. It makes me curious about some of the other shades from them. I saw quite a few like warm gray tones that I think would go great for tabards and cloths and the like. So I may be picking those up next time I see them at the store. Focus, please. There we go. Okay, nice. And you might see I got too much paint on the front. His power pack there. I'm not even worried about. It's all going to get filtered out enough at least, and it's an area that should be a little bit brighter. It's really not the end of the world. That is just maybe a sign that when you are getting paint off your dry brush, you really want to do you really want to check the sort of sides, because occasionally you can get bits of paint there also. And when they run across your model, you end up with mistakes like that. Obviously, not important in this case, but maybe if it was a little bit later on and it was not so easily fixable, then we'd have an issue. Sorry. I was single would be like painting not through my own eyes but through the camera, and that threw off all. Oh wow, I went real heavy on those highlights. Again, the areas they're in are not too bad, so I will just correct and move on. And if I need to, if they still are bothering me through the filter layer we're doing, then I can come back as needed. Quite a bit of white is on, but you know, is more contrast, and that's usually a good thing, especially if you're going to be gaming with these. A lot of these stores don't have the best lighting setups for appreciating high quality paint jobs. A bit of extra contrast pays dividends when you're a few feet away on the table. That is one of the biggest issues I have with my Templars, is they typically don't pop as much as I would hope through the lighting at many local stores. Which sucks because I'm there to show off my models primarily. The game is a secondary pursuit for me in many cases. No, because I like to do this thing with every paint job I do, or I experiment a little bit. Go in, try out something. in a way you don't usually. And I think what I will be doing is I'll add one final highlight layer. I'll see what that does. I'll see. Maybe it means I don't need an edge highlight later. Maybe it'll make it look better, maybe worse. But now I'll have a point of comparison. So, to give you maybe a better look of what a mini might look like after this filter layer, here is a side-by-side comparison of a Terminator that I'm in the middle of painting up, and one of these guys. Obviously, a lot of that contrast, that hard contrast, is shifted downward, but you still get these nice soft solid gradients that give you a nice striking black look. I'm really quite happy with the scheme, but let's see what happens when we push those highlights a little bit higher. We'll be able to compare and contrast. This probably looks psychotic to many of you, the fact that I am basically doing all this work to highlight out from black, only to bring it back to a black tone. If you are watching, then please feel free to say hi in chat. I am more than happy to talk about whatever projects you might be working on yourself. Apologies that I'm not doing the best job of getting all this on camera. I just want to be a little bit more intentional, and often that requires having my arms properly braced and secured so I don't mess anything up. I do have a squad of Bladeguard already painted up, but I think I will not be using the exact same scheme. I think I want to add them to my other crusade, the peripheral crusade. That is the scheme with some of that Imperial Fist iconography that you may recognize from my shorts. That is, I think, the main way I will be painting my Templars going forward. My other crusade had sort of blue and purple power swords, but I think I will go back. Not go back, but I think I will instead be doing sort of orangey, sort of yellow, not yellow, but like red orange, almost like magma look that I've been doing on a lot of my swords for these guys. This crusade rather. It's quite funny. You've heard of people having multiple Space Marine armies, but I like the Templars so much. I have multiple Black Templar forces. I think Templars are very, very neat. If you could tell. It's weird. I've noticed a lot of my YouTube shorts are quite low res when I upload them from my phone. It says it's out of focus. But my I mean that image seems quite crisp, so I may have to start recording using this app and then just editing from my desktop, because these should be appearing quite nice. I'm still not quite happy with strength these highlights. I think I could go a bit further. Areas before I pull a George Lucas and go far in some areas. I just recently watched the documentary again. Kind of crazy. The only Star Wars movie I've actually seen as an adult is Rise of Skywalker. I was thinking of doing it as a YouTube thing, going back and re-engaging with Star Wars and taking a look at what was a decently important part of my childhood. I mean, I definitely was not the greatest Star Wars fan. It was fun enough. So I am noticing there are a couple areas that so I'm gonna go into this very small dry brush. Oh, I say as I fuck everything up. And go with the small dry brush and pick out a few areas that makeup brush did not handle. I'll probably do this for all these fellas. Oh, if you can't tell, this is most definitely not speed paint. Paint somewhat slowly, so get used to it. I say as you can't even see what I'm doing. I'm doing that thing where I I'm not looking at the model, I'm looking at me painting the model in the webcam. Figure no one's here, so it's not too big of a deal, but probably not the best puppet to fall into. I really do wonder if the stream viewership, right? Because I seem to be getting quite a few views on shorts and things. I was hoping maybe dual streaming and vertical might help. It does not seem to be having a massive effect. Black Templars, everybody. I already picked these paints out. No reason for me to traverse, because I have triumvirate speed paints we will be using. I say as I smack them. Okay. A nice large brush for this. We're going to be doing... I usually go in a 3-to-1 ratio with a little bit of dilution from... Sorry, it's getting in my head. I go in a 3-to-1 ratio, but there will be some dilution just from the web. So add in a brush full of water. So I'm going to be doing 9 drops of the Grim Black, 6 drops of Speed Paint Medium, and 3 drops of this Cloudburst Blue. I have in the past done either more neutral toned with gray, I think it's called like Graveyard Gray, something like that, Gravelord Gray. It's right up here, right there. This guy, Gravelord Gray. I've also gotten a little warmer. All of them can look good. I've just been really liking the contrast between my my warmer scheme everywhere else and the cold armor. But that's usually because contrast is something I'm always looking for in my Templar scheme. Because depending on, of course, where you're gaming, it sometimes can be hard to find. Alright, this guy seems to be clogged. I always keep this sewing needle here on my desk. Quite gnarled and bent, but almost perfect size for Vallejo or Army painter caps. Just to slide down the nozzle. Say as I did that, and it still seems to be clogged. There we go. Of course, there's going to be some dilution to this mix already, which is why You got also always add a little bit more medium, a little bit more water. I am never quite certain, so I always like to go onto usually an area like a foot or something, and just see how that plays. That seems very. Oh, never mind. You need a moment to settle. Let's say that seemed very dark. Is looking quite blue. Maybe I didn't mix up the paints on the palette properly. No, yeah. We'll see. If I don't end up liking it, I can always adjust the mix later. This was 3 parts black, 1 part. Sorry, yeah, 3 parts black, 1 part of that cloudburst blue, and 2 parts of medium. Now these are the Speed Paint 1.0. I have not tried the Speed Paint 2.0 yet, because I bought a big box of these. They were quite cheap when a little bit after they came out. Only to find out that they are in some ways a little defective. I found that they have a pretty substantial drying time. And also they have issues with reactivation. Usually for this mix, it's not too big of an issue. For some of the other ones, though, I have noticed you need to be quite careful until about like 24 hours. And even then, if it's really a concern to you, you might have to, like if you're going to be dry brushing on top of it, which I did with my Tyranids a while ago, I just gave up and put a layer of matte varnish over the entire model, and that seemed to solve the issue. I don't know why, this mix seems to be a little bit more thick than normal. Maybe I'll add a little bit of water, see if that sorts anything out. I'm noticing some areas, like on this back of this pauldron, seem to really be pulling up there. We'll get a look at him better once he's actually dry. For a long time, I didn't do this whole contrast paint tone down thing. I used to do it with a black wash, and for a while I liked doing a similar makeup thing, but with very, very dark shades, and then simply going in and edge highlighting how I sort of at the tone I want. But I feel like this gives a nice balance where I'm not psychopathically edge highlighting and highlighting up black forever. spending, you know, hours and hours every model, but I'm also have quite a bit of control in where my highlights are, and I have room to correct them later. But this is a nice balance for me. Keep in mind, I've only been doing this method for like 2-3 squads. Basically whoever's on the channel. Then the rest is of my old guard were painted up in various other methods that I've cobbled together throughout time. I've really been liking this one. And I am letting it pool in certain areas just to try and get of a contrast there. I may need to mix up a little bit more because I feel like, yeah, this is getting a little watered down. Because I did add the brush fill water trying to extend it a little bit, but may have not been the right choice. So, really quick, just one more time, that's going to be 1 drop. Say as it seems to have gunked up on me again. 1 drop of Cloudburst Blue. 2 drops of medium. 3 of black. Now let's go on. Let's. Ooh, may have had a bit more than I thought on my brush, but let's see. No. We'll posit the paint elsewhere. And let's take a look there. Before it, starts drying a little too much, and we don't have room to manipulate. I think that looks fine. If I need to apply another thin layer, then I will. What do I say? I think I'm missing something. I realized did not go over the power pack. Very nice. Whereas perhaps I may have, well, perhaps I shouldn't have gone so vigorously, and I should have kept some areas not covered in the speed paint, because now I don't have anything to do while I wait for these to dry. Other than, go over handiwork and compare. I do have things that will be quite a bit brighter than what I'm used to, But already I can see they still read as a nice, solid black, but with a lot of visual interest. Not quite dry, but we can compare this and see that they are somewhat close. This has sort of an extra layer. Of course, still, I just on the camera it does seem a little bit more, or they seem less alike, but you know, we have still quite a few minutes until these are ready to be painted over. Now I am going to be doing a bit of yellow with the Imperial Fist logo on the left shoulder for the seal. Now I will take a quick little break. I can do 4 if you want. Oh, give me just a moment to respond to something. Actually, wow. I will see what the viewership is like for next hour. If we don't get any active chatters, I may end up ending the stream early. To be determined. I will take maybe, let's call it a 2-minute break, just to get some more water, refill my coffee, and we'll get back at it. Now that these guys are starting to dry. Might as well leave something in the chat. Alright, now that I have returned, I think when doing this path in the future, I need to remember that I can't just leave myself with nothing to do for a few minutes. Although I think I did do a decent job of doing some of these tabards and stuff without any paint on them. Ah. One moment, because I... See if I messed up something here. I'm trying to see how I get back to the stream. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. Either way, I'm still waiting on these to dry. But I guess I will be blocking in some other tones here. I'm not quite sure what I maybe like a freebooters band would be fun, right? A little bit of acknowledgement. Oh, or because there is a Kroot skull here. I think I actually was planning to make this the colors of my friend's Tau army. Let's see. Do I have a darker purple here? Yes, I do. So we brought, because that's what I use for some of my red details as a shadow layer. So I'll ring for the rest to dry. Let's hang out some. Also, this will be a good chance to try out a brand new sable brush from Monty Hobbies. This is a size 3. I bought this along with the paint, so I went to a friendly LGS, my first time there, and I had a great time, a very good store, and I think I will be back. So we'll be using some of this heavy violet from the extra opaque game color from Vallejo. I think I picked up the entire set because I was curious to try out this red because I was looking for a nice, good, dark red, and I quite like a lot of the paints in there. Not the best for glazing or anything like that, but for getting nice base coats in that they never let me down. I've heard of Monument Hobbies Pro Acrylic paints are... These are Monument Hobbies, right? I'm not being dumb here. It's the same thing. Yep. The Pro Acrylic paints are also supposed to be quite opaque, but this black really has not been that great, especially for a black, right? Usually highest opacity, but weirdly not. So I was touching the back, so let me just make sure. Ooh, some quite substantial pooling. Let me get the rest of this base coat down relatively quickly. And wick some of that away. It's like... If anyone's watching this, what are your takes on Tau blood? Because most sources say it's blue. Farsight was said to have gotten his armor tinged the color of his faction from the blood of his fellow Tau who were killed. Whoever that battle was. I don't know the Tau lore too well. His armor's red. So I don't... Oh wow. Oh wait. I'm being a dummy. Yeah, I'm definitely being a dummy. So. That's the thing about working out way excess. You need to be very careful because sometimes these paints don't like it too much once they start to dry. Just doing a few very thin layers of this purple onto that. You see the color really pops? Because besides that, these guys are basically just monochromatic. Aside of a few very subtle blue tints to the armor. I think we're about 90% on the drawing for the rest of it. Let me grab some of this. Some of the reasons I talked about buying some of that Monument Hobbies warm gray tones was because this sort of warm brown gray thing is called Darkstone. And I am basically out of it to the point where I tried watering it down, did everything I can to preserve it, but now it's somewhat over. It has great coverage though, but definitely on its last legs, and I really should have already bought something to replace it, but let's hope it sees me through one last project. Ooh, okay, let me not do that. Let me try and correct it. Oh, well, this whole thing is... Okay. You good? I think we're good. So, this is our base coat for our tabard and all of our details that will be white. However, I also like using it for anything that's going to be gold. So power sword. If you're going for a non-metallic meld, this is also a great starting point. I found non-metallic meld gold as. I have tried NMM before. I think I got decent results, but on the table, like what. You can get good at like a certain angle, right? I feel like if you like a more chunky style, I feel like it looked good. But if you do like a really like fine style, it just looks really weird on certain angles on tabletop. I don't know. Does not do it for me. I say this, I still can't decide what I want to be gold or not. If you know the skull, that'd be skull colored. I think I did the shin guards as silver for their Bladeguard. I'm not sure if I want to do that again. Iron Halo's gonna be iron colored. Yeah, might as well just go in. It's dry enough, I think. All these are both quite dark tones. You can already see it's giving a very nice contrast with the gold armor. This sort of warmer toned base coat. Also go over any leather or pouches or things of that nature with this. Because of the pose I have this in, this may have been better to do with sub-assemblies, but I think it's pretty easy to see how I'm almost out of this paint. I love the tone, and I use it for just about everything that's not the armor on this ball. Anything that's not armor and not steel typically starts off with this color. I think people are surprised that you don't need like 10,000 shades of brown and stuff like that. You can typically mix up anything, and the fewer colors you use, the more cohesive your scheme is, although occasionally you do want those flashes of color in that pop. So it's all about what kind of effect you're going for. And figuring out what kind of effect you're going for is really one of the main things you want to be doing early on in your hobby journey. You know, figure out what you want, and then you can figure out how to do it. And of course, unless you watch videos or tutorials or you talk about it, it's going to be hard to build up the vocabulary you need to actually even describe what you want, so. Basically what I'm saying is just paint more, and you'll be better off. Like everything, this requires practice. Now that we have this small, nice, and down, we can compare to the other iteration. You can see that the highlights are quite a bit brighter on this one, although these two also are not a million miles away from each other. Either way, this guy and this guy will still be receiving one more layer of highlights. I don't think we'll be doing those now. I typically like to do those at the end, once I get most of my base tones blacked out. I say blacked out like it's the base tones that are black and not everything else. In terms of the plate armor, I'm just sort of babbling here to myself, but don't mind me. Yeah, these acrylics are taking forever to dry, but that's to be expected. All those little capillaries for their wash to settle in. Oh, also purity seals and parchments and things I also need. But no, this guy is not quite dry yet. Did I miss any purity seals on this dude? I did. We're doing on time. We're already an hour 30 in, and I haven't done a huge amount. It's like maybe for detailed and stuff like that. We might do only one mall per stream instead. We might just focus on one dude, get up to a high standard. Just because I feel like that might be a little bit more engaging to watch for you, the audience. Oh yeah, bunch of stuff to like this guy, huh? You know what I said about only working on one model? I think I might just start doing that now. And putting those two guys to the side and just working on this unhelmeted fellow. What I think is, I forget if Bladeguard have a sergeant, like specified in their day issue, or I assume not, right? They typically don't do that in 10th, but still. basically everything here needs to be brown, because I think I'm gonna go for white. Or do I do yellow? I think I do yellow, actually. No one, I would ask chat, but no one's here to say. No one's here to tell me off for doing yellow. That's what we're going for. Alright, everyone, now we will start yellow in the backwards ass way. We've been doing everything so far with purple. Very pinky purple, but that's what they call it. I do really love AK paints. At least from the couple that I've tried. Always a fun purchase. Do have those new washes that I might be interested in picking up at some point. Actually, I'm trying to think. What's the best orientation I have that you guys can actually see what I'm doing? I think something like this might be good. I just realized, normally I put my face so far in these models. I might need to get those, like, you ever see people mini painting with those, like, goofy, like, magnifying lens glasses? I may pick up a couple of those, because usually I pride myself on having very good eyes. You know, able to pick out very small details easily. Having to paint from arm's reach does make me appreciate those a bit more. Some sort of magnifying glass would appreciate it at this point. Sure, all of you would appreciate it since I'm not always stuffing things right in my face to the point where no one knows what I'm actually doing. Being the entire point of the stream, you know. Oh. I was not supposed to pick that detail out. No one snitch on me, please. You don't tell, I won't either. I won that whole diatribe. How I finally found somewhere on my desk to keep my hands in such a way that you guys can actually see what I'm doing. I just don't do it. Now that we are done with blocking everything out in that pink color, we are going to move on. So actually, I just realized why am I pulling out another white? I already have white on my desk. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. They should have given this just a little bit longer to dry. One thing I will do really quick is mix up the pink and the purple we had for before and just do maybe a couple highlights on this cloth. I don't want to go too crazy because I still do want to draw on maybe like a town insignia with the other colors of the scheme. You want for a Neon Genesis Evangelion reference, which is going to be a little bit garish on my somewhat more muted Templars, but let's see. We'll see if we can't make it work. Pink, green, and yellow work. I mean, we already have some yellow on the model. Maybe I mean, technically we don't have any yellow. We will. Momentarily. That seems mostly dry. It's dry enough. If the two colors bleed a little bit, we'll go back in. Let me do my oil palette. I might need to shake that one a little bit more before I apply it again. Go for like an uneven sort of stippled look. I really like the base coat that the sort of yellow contrast over pink gives. However, I found that it works even better if you go in, block out some of those like highlight layers with like a regular sort of bright yellow color. That's how I did this guy. Sorry to be bringing up so much, please. The only other mini on my desk. Well, I guess I have a bunch of Terminators in that corner over there, but they are even less painted than the one we're currently working on, so not our concern. I know this looks a little splotchy and weird. I'm sort of trying to leave some shadows around those little like grooves that are flaring out of that That like Bladeguard cross design thing. Oh wow. Oh wow, 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 wow. Okay. Where did I touch white? Is there white paint everywhere? Weird. Just make sure I haven't touched any of the malls I'm painting. Obviously I know it's on my brush, but okay. Yeah, I have no clue what I just did there, but whatever. And we'll also go in. And you want to do like sort of even like a 90% rule here, but then like in particular. Sometimes I will dry brush this, but this is actually for bigger areas I'll typically do a dry brush plus I will go in and layer like this. But I think for this project the yellow isn't such. You can find basically only a shoulder pad and that guy. Well, maybe dry brush and a shoulder pad would be nice just for smoother. For smoothness sake. I may have done a little too much there. Well, a little too much given that I'm not quite used to a paint that even so thin down. It's such great coverage. I think that's fine. I typically do a little bit of Ian and yellow mixed with what's this yellow called? Ancient Honey. I found that the Sell It yellow was a little too yellow for me, so I bought this one, and whenever I use one of these sort of more orange toned hued ones, I will mix in a little bit of this just to give that sort of slightly even like almost mustardy Imperial Fists at the half. Where did I put my sable? I don't think I want to use this big brush. This Monument Hobbies one is quite nice. Given that it was not very expensive. I'm being like an idiot here. What the hell did I do with this brush, man? Like looking at my desk from every angle because I have 500 bits of recording equipment on my sight lines. That's like the damnedest thing. I have no clue I did. Weird. Okay. Very strange. So I'll do is I will approach on the shoulder pad. I'll take a quick look at how it's coming on. Not bad. The white coat was definitely not the most even, if you saw how it started drying, but you will... Some of that effect is nice, however we will go in and correct later on with some yellow. I really love how that looks on the shield, actually. Let's go on here. Let's see if I can't do a little bit to correct that. I at least want the shadows to look better. When you highlight up, that's fine. I was also just making sure I got some of the yellow on any of that exposed pink, just so none of that pokes through if I forget to, I'm not able to shade that properly. That might be quite jarring. I think Tabard next is probably a safe bet, right? Love this bone white color from Vallejo's game color range. So let's mix some of that into our dark stone, our painted dark stone that we were using before. Also, my wet palette is somewhat drying up here, I see. So let me fix that. I will be back momentarily. Alright, and we're back. How... I guess it sounds fine. I actually don't even know that, but I'll assume it sounds okay. Where did my nice brush go? It had to be within arm's reach. Right, that much is for certain. That is bizarre. This is the kind of thing where you do want a nicer brush, so I think I might bust out Windsor and Newton Sable instead. Also a size 3, technically, although a much... I don't know how they measure these, because this is a much nicer size 3. I think maybe different companies might use different metrics. Because I don't want to pick up another one in like size 4. I do like a larger brush sometime. Okay. So I think once we get some of the layers on this tabard going, I might call it a day. Probably. Maybe tomorrow if I find some time. Maybe even tonight after I get home a little early. Right, edit this stream into some sort of short and advertise for next one. Ooh, yeah, okay. Just a small little lighting adjustment, I think, made that pop so much more. Now we're gonna add in some of that more of that bone white. Make sure it's thinned nicely. And just sort of stippling some of that color, even into the shadows, to sort of help unify the color a little bit. If I need to do a little bit of glazing, I will. The folds here are quite stark, and now that I'm looking at it again, I'm not quite sure I'm happy with that sort of initial layer I did. I think I should have been a little bit more generous with how much I covered. doing something appropriate. So let me go in, get like a nice glaze and just go way too wet. Get like a nice glaze consistency and just sort of glaze into the shadows to help unify. Because you don't want to start again, right? Just water down the paint and reinforce that bit you failed to before. I will need to give that a second to dry, so while that's happening, we'll do some of these other areas. Two more highlight layers, and I think we'll call it stream. Quick little 2-hour stream on AI. See that, and then I'm really rushing through things here. And I feel like this tabard is not my best work. Especially for how prominent of a detail it is. You know what I just realized? Do you know what I just thought of? That. Did not even worry about the back of it. And I neck the back of it. Yeah, that looks a little dirty. A little. The pretty seals and stuff are coming out great. Less of the actual tabard, but I will maybe do a few alterations when the stream finishes. I think what I'll do is I'll just slap on that last highlight layer. Ooh, phone's on low battery. Okay. Oh well. Yeah, I'll slap on the last highlight real quick. And the alterations I need to make, I will make off screen. And then I can't find the color on them. Oh, right here. Ooh. Shit. Okay. Hey. I painted mommy robes. Oh. Very thin down layer of this. Will maybe help crisp up the robes, and if it doesn't, I will sort it out later. I don't like quite how deep those shadows are, although I guess now that's matte down, it's a little bit less intense. Yeah, the back of the rope definitely needs a little bit of work to sort of slap the colors here without. Yeah, a little bit too heavy on the contrast there. Although these purity seals are looking nice and crisp. Very nice. Let's see if I can't figure this out. We have some daylight above me, so I'm also just trying to use that as a little bit of a signifier of where I'm going wrong here. And now we can go back in. Let's highlights in. Now we're not looking too bad. Not going to reattach this quite yet, but just so you guys sort of understand what the shield's going to be doing. It's going to be going somewhere along the back, just as though he embedded it, and he's now cleaning off his power sword. Okay. One last final look, and I will call the stream. Please, feel free to subscribe and tune in later if you are all interested in following along with me finishing the squad up.